Welcome to Framework. We are here today to talk about Mad Max movies. I am Al Schwartz. With me, as always, is Imperator John Bernard.
It is I. Hello. Hello.
Or wait, are you a Praetorian officially?
I have not risen to the rank of Imperator.
Right.
Sorry. I don't know. All that's fuzzy. I don't know how the hierarchy works exactly. Not that I want to, but I kind of just like a bunch of titles getting thrown around more than anything.
Well, what's fun about, of course, we're talking about Furiosa, the Mad Max prequel to Fury Road, the Mad Max Legacy sequel. And it's sort of getting, Fury Road became a phenomenon, and Furiosa is kind of flopping at the box office, I gather, which is quite disappointing. Because, John, I'm here to make the case to you that Furiosa is better than Fury Road.
All right. I will be your counterpoint then.
Yes.
Okay, well, finally we're kind of gonna disagree on this, I think. All right. Mm-hmm.
Look, this is the case. Full disclosure, I'm not sure I believe this, but I think it's a lot closer than people are giving it credit for. I think Furiosa is getting unfairly, not just being unfairly treated at the box office, but critically, the fans are panning it in ways that
are they? Aren't people embracing this? They're just not seeing it. Like this has like cult favorite written all over it. I feel like.
Have you seen anybody talk about this movie without mentioning how much better Fury Road is than it?
There's you right now.
Yes, trying to blaze a trail through the wastes.
Right. It is. Okay. Well, here's the thing for me. It's not that this is. I do have issues with it, but the big issue I think is that it is so clearly more Fury Road stuff. It is ancillary Fury Road stuff, and it just lacks that sense of kind of jaw-dropping discovery that Fury Road has.
Well, sure.
By necessity,
okay.
Yes.
It is a prequel. So,
yes.
And it is a sequel. A prequel, sequel, whatever. It's a follow-up 10 years later. Mm-hmm. So, but here's my contention. A more nuanced version is probably worse for search engine optimization. Whereas I should just stick with it's better than Fury Road. But my contention is if Furiosa had come out before Fury Road, and the movies are the exact same as they are, people would have gone gaga over Furiosa and say Fury Road. Well, it's going bigger, but I don't know if it's doing it better. And it's a little simplistic in its plotting and whatever, and people would be holding up Furiosa just because if it had come first.
I can see. We would have that sense of discovery. Obviously, we'd be meeting the people eater for the first time, and that would be exciting. Stuff like that.
It would be weird to have the Immortan Joe as in Furiosa. Though. I think if Furiosa existed as its own thing, freestanding, you'd be like, what is going on with this secondary villain issue that it has no resolution? In my hypothetical, people are saying, well, Fury Road, they're trying to they tried to make an entire movie just the stowaway sequence. And so there's and it's maybe a little sweaty for how it's trying to do everything without slowing down.
I don't know. The only sense I would call Fury Road sweaty is that it is a hot and sticky looking film. And
it is.
It's really quite streamlined and thrilling in a way that I don't think this film touches, to be perfectly honest. This is, I think, the big thing that I think I've seen as a complaint about this film, and it is one I share, which is that, right up against Fury Road is some of the most jaw-dropping, eye-popping action sequences of the millennium. All in camera, all of it looks practical. Even like the sandstorm sequence, even that you get the sense you're watching actual vehicles fly through the air. I can't tell you what's in camera, what's made up in this film at all. It looks like a lot of other movies right now, and that stowaway sequence as well is kind of just like, well, I assume this is dangerous, but I'm not actually sure because I know I'm not looking at reality here. I'm looking at digital paintings. To what extent, I'm not sure because they're quite high quality. But I know it's not real. It's
what you're saying sounds like it should be a compliment to the effects that you can't tell what's done in camera and it's out of camera, out camera. But from context, it is not a compliment. And,
not really. No.
I do kind of agree with you. That is the thing. I mean, that's part where Fury Road gets part of its juice. That you can tell that it is in camera stuff and looks very dangerous. I mean, and that was going back to the Road Warrior. That was a big appeal of this franchise.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. And I do find that lacking in Furiosa, I'm afraid. And paired that with, I've seen these character designs before. I know more or less what the hierarchy of Immortan Joe is, and that's still kind of the strongest such hierarchy in this. I mean, you're kind of getting the biker gang, and they're cool, but they're a much looser team by design. So the world building, even though this is a very mythic minded film, it's still, it's just not quite amazing and new in the way the old stuff was. It's
a
really
prequel.
in the details. Yeah, it's a prequel.
It's stuck with that. I think it's one of the best prequels there is. Much like Fury Road's probably the best legacy sequel there has been. But those are both, I think, sort of misbegotten projects that are rarely worth the effort. I mean, there are the exceptions that sort of make. I don't want to amend the Constitution to outlaw them, because you can do good stuff can come of it, but they are handicaps going in, and that's what you're saying. Even what you're saying, I think, even as much as you're focusing on the effects work of the Stowaway Chase, for example, I think just the prequel of it hangs over it. It doesn't feel as dangerous because inherently in your bones from the start, our heroine is safe.
Yeah,
she's going to lose.
Praetorian Jack is probably going to lose at some point here.
Right. Yeah. There are fait accomplis here, and it's not like you really expect Mad Max to lose in Fury Road. No. But it does feel possible that Furiosa or any of the brides, or Nux, who does.
A lot of them do die, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Nux is actually a big hole in my theory here. He's something that the Fury Road has that Furiosa does not, that is excellent.
Yeah, Nux is missed, but I mean, this film does have Dementus. There's no immediate answer in Fury Road for that.
Right. Yeah. So, okay, here's my, my hypothetical world where these things come out in reverse order.
Sure.
Well, one, if this is our introduction to Immortan Joe and the War Boys and the People Eater and all that, then we're praising this to the high heavens for its world building.
Yes.
And Fury Road for not, or taking it slightly for not expanding it enough or whatever.
Sure.
The way that those roles are reversed. And I think, I guess to complete my broadsides against Fury Road, which I think is an A+ action movie, or the best, but it just gets elevated.
I like Furiosa too. I do like Furiosa. Yeah. It's a good movie.
No, yeah, Fury Road, absolute world-class action movie. It gets elevated by certain people, friends of ours.
Me, maybe.
Yeah, perhaps you. But that say it's the best movie of the millennium. And that's that's a lot of pressure to put on an action movie, especially one that is so stripped down in its present. I mean, it's over the top and stripped down at the same time. Narratively stripped down, over the top in its stunt work and visual presentation.
It is a contradiction in many ways.
Yes. And one of the ways it's a contradiction, one of the things that I think gets it some extra juice in the Letterboxd crowd, is that it is a female-led action movie for guys. And
that's not new exactly. I mean, James Cameron.
It's not usually this successful. Yeah. Okay. So James Cameron did it, twice over the course of 20 years. And I mean, between Aliens and Terminator 2 even, because Sarah Connor is not the action hero of Terminator.
She's the protagonist though.
She grows into it. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But it's different.
Anyway, yeah.
That Furiosa is sort of going punch for punch with Max.
Yeah, I mean, Mad Max Fury Road, of course, you would have to say that Mad Max is the protagonist of that film, I believe.
But really only because it opens with him and his voiceover.
Yeah.
She is definitely driving the action and has the more,
that's true.
arc, I guess.
That's true. And I mean, it is kind of a two-hander between them. Not to say there's not several other effective characters, but yeah, I mean, they're both the leads of that film. You would nominate both of them for Best Actor or Actress, without doubt. Weirdly, Furiosa, I'm pretty sure Chris Hemsworth is the main character.
I think he's the best performance, unless it's the young Furiosa. I don't know.
I mean, yeah, he's no, okay. Protagonist wise, structurally, yes, Furiosa is of course the main character, but like she makes so much less of an impression in this film than she does in Fury Road. Afraid.
Does she? I don't. She made a huge impression for Fury Road, so it's hard to argue against that.
Right. Well, that's the thing. They're coming up against this kind of epic film. One of the greats, by popular acclaim at this point. An acknowledged classic. That's a hard act to follow, especially with a prequel. So, they made some choices, I think, that set the deck against them to start with. Not least of which being, okay, not only is it a prequel, it's none of the original stars can come back. You don't get Charlize again. In fact,
you don't even get a Morton Joe. You get Rictus.
It's, so right off the top, we're kind of like giving us things that make the buy-in a little harder, I think. And George Miller is the sort of guy who does not give a shit and will take any challenge, create challenges for himself just to beat them, and usually does. So that's not a problem in and of itself. And I don't think it's a problem in the film, really. But, it's tougher. And I mean, I don't know. I don't even care to speak about the box office of it all. That's not going to matter at all in, a year from now, when people own the 4K of Furiosa and are watching it in the same way they watch The Thing or whatever, like any number of films that were not successful upon release and found their audience. This is going to be one of them. No question.
Well, I want to talk about it in the context of this. I do wonder if one of the things that is hurting it is that while it is a female-led action movie, in a way, even more so than Fury Road was, because Fury Road was a two-hander where even the Dude Bros still had Mad Max there to hold their hand,
right?
And the impressive thing about the Furiosa character there is how she's shoulder to shoulder with them, punch for punch, shot for shot, and Furiosa does not have that necessarily. I mean, yeah, there's Praetorian Jack in there, but this is not a two-hander with him the way that Fury Road is all the way through. I mean, even if you count Nux in there, there's two guys in that truck doing a lot of the action stuff with her. Now, and I wonder to what extent that we want to make the case always that you can do action movies with women.
Yes. Duh. Yes, of course you can.
And you can, but is it a harder thing to make action movies actually for women? And maybe Furiosa, because it is sort of a solo female-led project, it presents itself as an action. It's writing the action movie for women, and maybe action movies are not necessarily for women. Or they're not. You have to do more than just put a woman in the driver's seat of the war rig to make it actually more appealing to women. Does this make any sense?
Yes. No, it does. I mean, we can just kind of fall to gender stereotypes and be like, it's the equivalent of making a rom-com for men. They don't do that too often. It's just the action genre is coded as a male thing. Now, obviously, women like them, and they're very profitable, and they're probably, going to keep getting made, and more than rom-coms, which apparently, I don't know, they're having a little comeback. But the point being, I think most action movies now, they are trying to be for men. The larger ones, like Furiosa, want to be for everyone. Right?
Well, they would like to be. I mean, especially
Bad Boys for Life doesn't give a shit about women.
Oh, that's okay. Fair enough.
They're going for a specific audience with that kind of film. This is kind of bigger than that, though. This wants to be a multi audience blockbuster film that makes I don't know what they were hoping for, $200 million with this thing, something like that. At the
I'm sure they were hoping for big that it would beat Fury Road, which
right. which is not a huge hit. That made like 180 or something like that.
I think it did really, because I think it played overseas for quite a while, and
I mean, they wouldn't have made a sequel if it wasn't profitable in some way, but
I mean, it's also one of the most praised movies.
Yes.
Like I could, and again, with the depths of IP barrels they're scraping, like
fair enough.
Of course they would go with that. But speaking of scraping my IP barrels, like one of the things I was thinking about, you mentioned rom-coms. There is some precedent for like Bridesmaids, for example, being sort of a let's do a Apatow movie, but just put women instead of men. And they didn't change much else, and that was a huge hit. It worked. And I haven't seen Girls Trip. It seems like that's sort of just let's do a sort of like a guy's guy comedy, but with a group of women, and it kind of works that way.
Well, niche audiences, yeah. I mean, there's there's smaller and smaller versions of that throughout, but action movies tend to cost a lot. Is the thing.
A ton. And we have been getting more female-led action movies.
For
there
sure.
are the various, Red Sparrow and anything where Charlize or Jennifer Lawrence or Scarlett Johansson is an assassin.
We have two legit female action stars right now, which is Charlize and Scarlett.
But those movies don't hit as big.
Not usually. Like. I mean, Scarlett kind of has Black Widow numbers to boost that.
Well, so this is what I'm getting to. Like, my example, the other thing I was thinking of was the Marvel universe and right. How that has sort of gone awry in phases 4 and 5. And I think there's many different like things you can point to for why that might be. But one of the big ones I feel is they had their genius idea, which was, all right, our original generation of heroes are getting old and their contracts are getting too expensive and so forth. So let's have all the middle-aged men hand off the heroic mantle to a spunky young girl character. And
it was weird when it happened like the 4th time. Yes.
Yeah. That was their only idea for a whole phase. And some of them worked better than others. The Black Widow, I think it worked pretty well. One, because it wasn't a full-blown teenager. Like they got a really good actress to do it. There's a context for Black Widow where it makes sense that there's other female assassins, and there's more of a sisterly thing. I think the Hawkeye transition went pretty well. And then there's a lot of just kind of duds. And I mean, part of that, I think there is a sort of irresistible pull to the idea that, well, we made the most successful thing in the world by catering to teenage boys. There's all these teenage girls out there too. So we could just double the audience and we would have double all the money in the world.
Right.
And like, how could you say no to that logic in a boardroom? But I think there's another aspect to it, which is there was a lot of people giving him flack for quite a while about how, it's all these white guys and at the helms of these Marvel movies. And
several Chris's, yes.
yes. I mean, which is a fair comp.
Yeah.
And I think there might have been a mistaking at the boardroom level, partially understandable because there's such a huge financial impetus to want it to be true. But a mistaking for like volume of criticism to translate into actual appetite for the thing that you're being criticized for missing. Like, because people are saying like, oh, these movies are so just geared towards boys, that means that people were chopping at the bit to see a version of it that was with girls. And I don't know that that's panned out.
I think they were though. And I think they just kind of like kept bringing back more food, and it's like, oh, more here, have some more of these movies. And they weren't good. I think if they were, if these movies had been better, and not even to say that they were shitty, just that they weren't great.
Yeah, but they were,
some were shitty. If they had, kept quality control
great.
Up, none were great, I think is big. The TV quadrant, I mean, Disney Plus, it's amazing that we kind of lived through an age where just like almost every major studio decided they needed streaming money and just destroyed all their IP with oversaturation.
I mean, Disney Plus has been the huge offender on that. Like it,
amazing.
It's a bit of a weird object lesson for how you can sort of degrade and destroy your own IP without ever producing like a giant bomb. Like it doesn't take a Heaven's Gate to take down a studio, but you just need quality control. And like, you know, it's weird. Like people did not associate Marvel, you know, phases 1, 2, 3 with extraordinary quality. It was more like the rap on them even then was, well, they're never transcendent, but they're always pretty good.
I contend those were extremely well-made movies. It's like
I do too.
Phase 3, they're kind of incredibly well-made, and we just took them a little bit for granted. But they wouldn't have been just world-crushingly successful if they hadn't been really, really good at what they were doing.
I agree, actually, that we've been over that in other contexts too. Right. But and you're right. It's hard. You can't separate out one factor over the. You know, we have COVID. You have just. I think you're right, actually, to highlight just the incredible. I mean, people were already kind of saying like we're getting so many Marvel movies before Disney Plus came along and quadrupled the like total amount of hours of Marvel content that were being pumped at us every year. At a time when theaters were also shutting down because of the pandemic, and like it felt like everything else was slowing down, and this fire hose was speeding up, and also they weren't as good anymore.
Yeah,
and so it's hard to separate that out.
Factors. But Trump had something to do with it, I'm sure.
Yeah.
You know, like it's everything. It's just a perfect storm of reasons why this went down the way it did. You know,
but I do wonder if if there was something that maybe their action movies are maybe more tailored to male taste, male psyche, whatever, like at a deeper level than just having boys in the lead roles.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, not a lot of women are like, I fucking love Terminator 2. I mean, there's some, but it's not a trans. Yeah. Well, that one's a bad example. Aliens, let's say. Aliens, you know, you could say that's a woman's action movie. Not really. It's a guy's action movie that stars.
Well, why not Fury Road as the example?
Well, sure. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. That brings us back to what we're here to talk about ostensibly. Yeah. and
that's what, and I think, I mean, I'm trying not to give us much credit as male film dorks.
Yeah, right. Well.
That here's my contention. Maybe Furiosa, if it had come out in 2015, would not have done as well with our contingent because we just wouldn't have seen it in quite the same droves if it didn't have Tom Hardy there to guide us in and to ease us into cheering for a woman and all that. And
it's a deeply weird movie.
It is. Well, yeah. Okay, here's my other thing about Fury Road being a little overpraised.
Okay.
One, I think there's some genuine howler, like bad dialogue in the movie. The Furiosa character has a couple, 3 just absolute clunker lines that anytime somebody in that, but people aren't talking in that movie that much, but anytime they saying the word redemption, I'm kind of rolling my eyes at like, really, you just had to lay it out there, didn't you? And I think her big badass send off of Morton Joe when she says, "Remember me," before she calls him, it's like, well, yeah, of course he remembers you. Most of his lines have been growling your name. He's uprooted his entire
one of his employees, one of his one of his war generals, or at least I infer
he uprooted his whole army to chase you across the desert. Yeah, he knows you're the main person he's concerned about. Of course he remembers you.
It's not the best.
I don't know why. I don't know why it wasn't Witness This.
That's better.
Anyway, these are nitpicks of all nitpicks, but Fury Road, it's kind of unassailable, so I have to really reach.
Remember me is a good thing for her to say in Furiosa.
Exactly.
So maybe it's just her tagline, retroactive.
But the other thing I'm getting at here, though, is I think, especially on 2015, there was, as a possibility for why this might be overpraised, this is sort of we're getting to a peak of hot take culture, and the scolding strain of progressive criticism, and there may have been a little bit of anxiety about like, okay, but is it possible to enjoy anything at the standard we're setting? Are we just being like ruining everything? It's like, no, Star Wars is terrible. You can't like Star Wars. You can't like Marvel. They're too, too chauvinistic, too blah, blah, blah. Everything's too racist. Everything's too homophobic. And then Fury Road comes along. It's like, oh no, okay, we can seize on this. here's an example of you can do it all right, and the politics are simple enough and to pass, but progressive enough to pass muster, and we can always now we can just say, it's okay that we tore every other movie a new asshole because all anybody ever had to do was just make Fury Road, and then everything's okay, and it validates all our other criticisms. No way. That's my other like sort of specious theory for why people seized on it so much.
Well, I mean, I don't know. We're talking about like the extremely online arguments at this point, which I guess is appropriate for what we're doing here. Maybe I don't know. I mean, it is frustrating to see the left cannibalize itself in these ways. And like it is kind of a perfect film in that way. You couldn't really level much criticism of it. I mean,
I guess that is the thing that bugs me about it is watching the left not just cannibalize itself. I guess, yeah. I mean, attack itself, of course, but also just become the scolds and the no fun ones. And it's weird because the right hate is more driven by hate explicitly and hates a lot of people and a lot of things, but they seem to have a better time doing it. They're
they definitely seem to be enjoying themselves. They kind of hate everything, though. But I guess that brings them pleasure, so that's okay. But
they consider themselves external to it. I mean, watching movie geeks hate on movies becomes a little depressing after a while.
Nobody hates Star Wars as much as Star Wars fans, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah, that is true, and I don't know. I mean, is the left really like cutting itself off at the feet, though? That's not why Furiosa isn't performing. Like you can see online articles about how Wakanda Forever. Actually, it's problematic, sure, but like that didn't affect the box office per se. That's just internet tempest in a teacup kind of shit, I think.
No, but I am interested also, like, it's a little adjacent to the box office thing. It's
trends, I guess. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Why is the crowd that holds up Fury Road as the greatest thing of this millennium not a lot cooler on Furiosa?
Are they, or is it just less of us than we thought? Is it kind of one of those things where?
Well, it's both.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
But I see. I mean, everything. Every critic I've seen, almost every bit of film geek conversation I've seen about it, has mainly focused on all the ways it's not as good as Fury Road.
I mean, it would be hard for a sequel not to come up against that, let alone a prequel.
No.
Which
I can acknowledge some of the ways too. I mean, I think Anya Taylor-Joy is a step down from Charlize Theron.
Yeah, and not much chance to do much, to be honest. Like, you don't think of Furiosa or Fury Road, excuse me, as having a lot of dialogue scenes or working as a character study. But considering that, I think it's a much clearer picture of who Furiosa is than the movie called Furiosa provides. And part of that, I believe, is just, we kind of know all the steps, but also I think splitting the actress, like basically halfway through the film, different actress, it feels less like a consistent characterization. And I think it's written that way too, like, okay, we kind of know what all these steps are. Frankly, there's things that I've left off of her journey that I expected to see, and I was kind of disappointed they weren't there. More politicking with the Immortan Joe crew, I wanted a deeper relationship with Praetorian Jack. He's cool as shit. He was just sort of like a light mentor figure, and then he's gone. That could have been like, the love of her life, structurally. Would have, I think, reinforced the whole thing.
It did seem like they were like weirdly reluctant to make that an explicit romance, and I'm like, oh, why not?
It would be good. That would be great. In fact, yeah. Uh-huh. So,
it is anyway, even if it is somehow platonic, if she's like asexual or something.
Yeah, she definitely seems asexual in this film. Like the whole world seems asexual. I guess that's kind of built into the war boy culture. But
there's sexual violence.
Yeah, there's always sexual violence, but that's it. That's all there is. Sex equals violence, essentially, in the wasteland, I guess. And I don't know. I guess that's true of Fury Road as well. But considering Fury Road is takes place over the course of, what feels like a couple days, it's less of an issue for me. Yes, this is Furiosa is attempting to be the portrait of a life kind of thing. It's almost like a Furiosa biopic. Yeah.
It's a picaresque. And well, I think you're right there. That and that's something else to hit on. That, like we were talking last week on here about Ferrari and biopics, and if one were to look at Furiosa as a real person, the thing you're praising there is like, you like the form of biopic that just zeroes in on a very particular time in that person's life.
Yeah, like Fury Road did.
Larger,
yeah.
Which is exactly Fury Road does. Whereas Furiosa is structured more like a traditional biopic in the ways that you and I tend to trash on. It commits some pretty big cardinal sins narratively. Like, things you shouldn't do. You should not begin your prequel with a prequel to that prequel, which is what Chapter 1 of this movie, the pole of inaccessibility, basically is. It gets away with that, I think, by having a tremendous performance by Furiosa's mother, like near silent performance, and introducing Dementis, which is a big thing that I think this movie has that Fury Road does not have, which is a bigger, better villain that is more involved in that.
Dementis kind of carries the film, to be honest.
Yes.
I think Dementis is transcendently good. Like, no question about that. We'll have a whole Dementis corner here coming up, I'm sure. But yeah, that's the thing. The movie, that's like the movie's ace card is him. That performance, that character. That's where all the new world building comes from. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and that he is not just a lesser clone of Immortan Joe.
Not at all. Not remotely. Yeah.
Or even like Lord Humongous, you might expect based on the naming convention.
He's without a question the best villain in a Fury Road film, or a Mad Max film, I would say, without question.
Yeah.
They
got a lot of good ones though.
They do. This is the big triumph of Furiosa, I think, is Dementis. So,
one of the other things I love about all the Mad Max series that I wish other action movies would be the thing they try and copy is his love of henchmen and filling out the gangs with, even the opening credits will list, so and Vernon Wells as Wes and so as Johnny the Boy and as Bubba Mattis or whatever. Like, the fourth string goons underneath the warlords have names and backstories, and you tell that Miller likes those guys, even as he's going to mangle them in horrendous ways.
Yeah, that's been a charming aspect of this series all the way back to even the first film, which, is, I think, objectively the worst one, right? I mean, I don't know. People like that one somehow, but I mean, if I'm going for a Mad Max movie, that's the last thing I want.
I think there's a strain of people that will put Thunderdome last because it's got the, Kitty Ewok stuff in it, and they like the Mad Max is the original is the nastiest and most violent.
Is that
not true anymore? Most violent. Yeah. You're right. Most violence the wrong way, but it is the nastiest.
I suppose. Yeah. I mean, it feels like an exploitation film in the way the others don't.
An exploitation film.
Right. I mean, you can see it kind of getting away from that progressively with each film. It becomes more classical things, like to the point where Furiosa feels more like Lord of the Rings than an exploitation film.
Yeah, that's true. Well, it's such an amazing. It is one of the weirdest stories in Hollywood history. That I guess not even Hollywood, it's because it's done in Australia and Namibia and everything. But that the original Mad Max movie was just written as like a Dirty Harry kind of cop revenge thriller thing. It's set in modern day Australia, and they couldn't afford to use any actual like city street locations, like to shut anything down or to afford extras or whatever. So as a budgetary measure, they just kind of changed the setting to a vaguely sort of apocalyptic setting where like the world's becoming depopulated and everything's run down and empty. And from that, we move from there to Road Warrior. And now George Miller's entire career is that he is this visionary of the post-apocalypse that has defined how we view all that stuff. Crazy way.
There's something about this series that I love and adore. And this is sort of my read on them. It's not like I'm not or the original person who thought this up or anything. I read this somewhere at some point on the internet. But what's kind of a great way to watch these movies is as sort of the telephone game version of myth and legend. Progressing and becoming more and more elaborate and more outrageous and and crazier and bigger and more mythic as it goes. So the idea is the first movie happens, Mad Max, and it's a cop and some wife, and his wife gets killed by a gang, and he takes revenge. Fair enough. The second film is sort of an extrapolation of that story into a myth of the post-apocalypse. So after the world has fallen, they're still telling stories of Mad Max Rockatansky, and the story has shifted in the telling, and it's become this bigger thing where he's a sort of a messianic figure.
And that becomes pretty explicit in Thunderdome, and like even the framing device of Road Warrior. And I totally. I don't think that's.
But it's the same story is the idea. So each film, like Fury Road, is just like hundreds of years later, when the world is like completely lost its mind, version of this story, of this fucking like road duel between a gang and a cop, in the end of the 20th century.
Well, it's there's an extent to which, Road Warrior, Thunderdome, and Fury Road all have the same basic story, the same character arc for Max. That he is this warrior out of the wasteland that comes out, tries to come on as sort of a Eastwood man with no name, amoral hard ass, and warms up and open himself up to protecting a group of innocents, and becomes a hero in the process. That's what they all tell.
And the characters have corollaries in each version, like, but they kind of morph a little, like Bruce Spence as the gyrocopter pilot, turns into a different pilot in the next thing, but it's still Bruce Spence, stuff like that. Then the
metatextual aspect of the guy who plays Toe Cutter becoming a Morton Joe.
Yes. Yeah. You got weird little stuff like that. And you've got, like Anti-Entity kind of splits into a Morton Joe and Furiosa a little bit. Like, it's neat. It's all really cool, and it all mirrors and parallels itself. Furiosa kind of steps away from that. But it's also the most mythic of all these films, inherently. It
does have the history man talking at the end and talking and sort of framing it as this is the story of Furiosa as told to me in a similar way that Thunderdome does, and Road Warrior.
Or Conan the Barbarian. It's heightened and really it's completely outside of reality at that point. I mean, they're even giving you different versions of how things went down, but this is the real version, stuff like that. And these characters, these larger than life figures like Dementis and Morton Joe and Furiosa, they become sort of like American folklore figures, or Greek mythology folklore figure. It's like Pecos Bill and and Paul Bunyan. They got in a fight or something like that, and it's one of those stories, and we're just hearing some version of that.
Or going back to the Greeks, it's Hercules or Jason the Argonauts. There's so many versions, or King Arthur, that there are so many like different versions of those stories that maybe you can't actually align them all up into one strict continuity.
Yeah, I mean, like the Dementis's ultimate death or fate is kind of just like, that the fact that they give you several versions of it, but then there's also, the one they land on is kind of, it's reminiscent of like, I don't know, what happens to Loki, the mythological Loki, it's like, or Prometheus, that sort of thing. Even it sort of steps outside of the established reality and becomes magical realism, just to kind of be like, and it's all within a mythic context.
But that mythic context has been in place since the Road Warrior in 1981. Like, I don't think you're imagining this or doing the work in a way.
Oh no, it invites it. It openly invites it. Yeah, I mean, you got the storyteller. I don't know, opens and closes the film. That's true in Road Warrior too, isn't it? The little kid.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Thunderdome ends with that.
And it's fairly implied in Fury Road, at least.
Yeah. Speaking of Thunderdome, I watched that. I'd never seen that all the way through until like 2 days ago. I was inspired by Furiosa to do that. I like that one a lot. I see what people object to, that sort of some of the kiddie stuff gets a little cutesy, but I kind of like, and the reason why Dementis is such a welcome figure here, and maybe why I'm a little resistant to putting Fury Road on the highest of pedestals. I think this Mad Max wasteland setting, the whole Mad Max thing, for as violent and rapey as it is pretty silly.
Oh yeah,
as a concept. I don't really buy that this is a realistic look at post-apocalypse in any way. I really
no, they're mythic figures. Yeah, it's Greek characters and demigods and such.
Yeah, I mean it's grounded in some ways, but it is also just again I don't really buy that humanity would behave this way in the wasteland. Even like
Australia, I don't know.
That is the other thing. That's the fun thing about watching the original Mad Max is playing the game of, is this weird to me because it's an ongoing apocalypse or because it's Australia? And they're just weird. But yeah, I don't know. I just the constant war bands and the savagery that I don't know. I feel like there's that few people left around where we're actually going to treat people as more of a resource that we're not going to be quite as life is not going to be as cheap. And we're probably going to be a little more careful about conserving our resources and not going to war and just destroying them. Like,
I mean,
if we destroy 8 or 9 cars in a day in a world where manufacturing a new car is pretty much an impossibility, like that is a horrendous tragedy for that society.
It's a world gone mad, Al. It's the world is dead, and the only thing left is madness. So
yeah, and I don't really want it to be different for that. I'm just saying it makes it a little hard for me to take it totally seriously.
That's fair enough,
and and that's why I embrace Dementis so much. Is that he thinks this entire setup is kind of ridiculous and brings that to it, and I like that. Immortan Joe is an effective villain in Fury Road, but he is not. I don't know. He's sort of representational. He's just a growling, pustular cutout of a oppressive patriarchy, and he doesn't say much beyond pointing and hollering character names. I mean, he's mediocre is the most savage bird in like cinema history.
He's
but
like a He-Man villain that rapes you.
Yeah, so He-Man villain that rapes you. That is actually a really good description of Mad Max bad guys.
Yeah, basically. I mean, well, that's not untrue of Dementis as well, is the thing. That's let's do our Dementis thing now. This performance, wow, he's great, huh? Wow, yeah, well done, great. Chris Hemsworth. This is exceptional stuff. Is it the best he's ever been? Is this or is it require a body of work to compare it to be like, okay, this is didn't know he had this in him kind of thing? Or I don't know.
I mean, I think
I would love him if I'd never saw him before, I'm sure.
Again, it's going to win me no letterbox points to say this, but I think Thor is his best work, actually, even as a lot of those Thor movies are not great, as good movies as this. Mm-hmm. They are sort of just carried by this tremendous, almost kind of miraculous performance that he's giving off in that whole series of now, I don't know, 8 or 9 movies he's played Thor in. I think, when we talked about him in Black Cat, it is definitely interesting. This is a role that he could kind of only play now, or he could not have played then. No. We talked about in Black Cat, him like he hadn't quite figured out what his actual role is outside of Thor, and he can't escape the fact that he always is going to look kind of like Thor, and this is a way to work against that, but also not so fundamentally.
Yeah,
it's using aspects of it, but spinning in a different direction.
Absolutely, and what an amount of energy! What a look! What a vibe! What a command of the screen! I mean, the only quotable character in this film, really. I mean,
nobody else talks.
Nobody else talks, really. Yeah, But man, like everything that drops out of his mouth is gold. It feels improvisational, even though I doubt it is. It is all consistent within this character that is, that's not really, it's not somebody we're supposed to like. And he effectively is not somebody we like. I don't know. He's on sort of a preordained trip from when we meet him, if he's Tulsa Doom. So, we know we're not sympathizing with him at any point, but that kind of frees us up to enjoy him, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, as much as we know Furiosa is safe in this movie, quote unquote, because she's going to survive, we know he is doomed,
right?
And but there's something. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's that it frees us up to enjoy him so much as the other weird thing this movie, like prequel status, sort of backs it into is that we are when he is in conflict with a Morton Joe. That is the side Furiosa ends up on is the Joe side, and so our guys are kind of on we don't want are on a side we don't want to win either. We don't want to root.
Well, we know that
side.
We know what happens though. We know what happens because of Fury Road. We know. Okay, well, she's working for him in Fury Road, so it's presumably the story of how she comes to work for him and what went down between them. Not much, as it turns out. I would like more there, but that
But Dementis is more likable than in Morton Joe. Like even in between that 40-day war between two bad armies, like I think Dementis is the one that I like better than the War Boys.
Absolutely, but you can't say it'd be better off if Dementis won because he is a madman. He has no and when he even takes on like some managerial roles in the middle of the film, he is clearly not capable of it. And bristles at it and fails at it and goes rogue. Which is
something else that's great about both these movies is that they are really they have the perfect villains for the Trump era. And Dementis is definitely that. He's silly and vainglorious, but not really less dangerous for that. And he's also just bad at the job. Better at getting the job of ruining Gastown than he is at performing it. And we another episode that we have not released yet, but last time we talked about Mass Effect, which will come out a month from now.
Yeah,
we kind of mentioned in passing the difficulty with doing villains post Trump, and that that it's hard to buy sort of evil masterminds anymore because more and more we've been exposed to evil being really stupid but still dangerous, and nobody is nailing that in movie form better than George Miller in these two movies. That was another miraculous thing about Fury Road is how much if it had come out a year later after Trump had gotten the nomination even, but it would have seemed like he was
a really on the nose Trump parallel. Yes,
exactly.
I mean,
it's like, the War Boys, the War Boys, the Proud Boys, and the way that they just follow his dance for, in his shadow, looking for his a little crumb of recognition from this grotesque blob of of oozing flesh. Anyway, it got in there first and sort of just nails it so hard in a way that it would, if it had come out second in 2024, it would feel like, okay, George, if you want to make your political movie, maybe you should make that movie. But there's a purity to it now that's no, it's just kind of Breshit. He's got his eye. Even as I'm saying this is unrealistic, I don't think this is how humanity works. Everything. Maybe he knows something I don't.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's the Starship Troopers things. It's the Starship Troopers things. If you watch that movie now, it feels like it's a satire of the U.S. response to 9/11, but it was made in 1997. It's incredibly on point, and to the point where it would be if they did it now, or
it would be on the nose instead of on point.
Yeah, exactly. It's crazy. I mean, and the reason for that is Verhoeven understood how fascism works. It's as simple as that. So I think it's just George Miller knows what the fuck he's talking about.
He knows how cults of personality work.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm not sure he knows how nipples work. That's a confusing thing for me, but that's a different topic.
A lot of nipple play in this film. My God.
But play a nipple abuse.
Abuse, yes.
Dementis brings in the guy from the gas town with this elaborate contraption that's going to drive a spike through his head if he releases it. Okay, great. Love it. This is Mad Max. Go to town. But he also hooked that up in such a way that if he does fire it into the guy's skull, it is chained to Dementis' own nipples so that it will rip off Dementis' own nipples if it fires. And
yes, of course.
I can't quite wrap my head around this unless he's just been really wanting to tear off his own nipples, but hadn't been able to find this an occasion special enough.
I'm going to make me tear my own nipples off. That's how I'll get around it. Yeah,
it's such a wild decision to have no explication whatsoever.
Well, there's just an element of Cenobite to every character in this, a little bit.
Exactly.
There's a part of them that enjoys getting their bodies mutilated by necessity.
Well, yes, and there's certainly a Cenobite that tastes lives off the taste of tears, right? Like,
That's sure. Yeah. I mean, of course. It's I mean, that seems built into the world. Like that's just like, yeah, he'd do that. I think, and that's kind of what's incredible about that character is that most things he does, it'd be hard for him to surprise you by the second hour of this film. Like, I mean, the biggest surprise is honestly in his big final scene with Furiosa, where they're kind of like collaborating on what the revenge will be a little bit. Like that he's kind of has that amount of perspective and is able to sort of step outside of himself to help her with her narrative.
To give her notes.
Yes. Like that's neat. That's a way that you can, a way he keeps surprising, I guess, as the film goes on, but it takes that extremity to do so. And yeah, that's why this character is so great, by the way, is just that, that he just can just kind of one-ups himself constantly throughout the film, even when he's failing. Like the character comes better as the more L's he takes,
Yeah, that's so much fun when you can pull that off with a villain. And that's what it seems like. That's also what makes it such a great, sort of Trump era villain.
Yeah.
Is that you can step on so many rakes and still be the villain. That's like, and still be a danger. Is pretty impressive. And that's a difficult thing to pull off narratively. Apparently it's kind of easy to do in the real world. Who knows? But yeah, no, I love like as Dementia gets diminished, the character only gets better.
Mm-hmm. And he's just the cape, the chariot with the 3 motorcycles, every little thing about this guy. This is where you really feel the sort of brave world building and exciting kind of like, oh, this fucking dude, what's his deal? That that you get in the original Fury Road. This is where it lives in this film, almost exclusively, to be frank. Even Praetorian Jack, who I like very much, is just like, oh, so he's a Mad Max.
Yes, he is.
And so I guess that's why I'm so into Dementis in this and the performance. Even the nose plays to me. Even the silly ass fake nose. It just seems it puts him in a tradition, like a theatrical tradition with Captain Hook or something like that. He feels kind of like a literary character. I guess that's maybe too much. I don't know.
No, I absolutely. I mean, I had the exact thought that the nose plays, and yeah, it's part of that great just sort of off-centering. Because if he didn't have the nose and he was just a sort of cult leader that looked like Chris Hemsworth, it would kind of be doing Bad Times at the El Royale again, which
that's not a good performance, actually. That's
exactly.
That one didn't work. Mm-hmm. That's before he could do this sort of thing.
I don't know if it's what he needs for his performance or what we need to see for us to accept it, but it makes him immediately more goofy, even than a Morton Joe, who looks absolutely absurd, but presents himself in a much more serious, growling fashion. But the absurdity of that character and the loquaciousness of the character, having somebody that talks, is a great change of pace from Fury Road. That likes to hear themselves talk.
Yeah.
It gives this movie its own, more of its own character, which I do enjoy. And I just love his diss of, I hold them profoundly in contempt.
That's so good. It's so good.
I hope that lives on as a put down.
Everything that comes out of his mouth is at least somewhat quotable. Plus the accent, you get to pretend they do the accent. It's a little sort of Australian Bane kind of thing. It's fun.
It does have some Bane in there.
Mm-hmm. Ready, steady, go. Yeah.
My Smeg will choose. There's a guy named Smegma in this.
Oh, yeah. And Scrotus.
Scrotus Erectus. Is that what his name is? Scrotus Erectus?
Rictus Erectus? I don't know.
It was Rictus Erectus. I don't know if they're both
Erectus, the family name for Morton Joe? Is he Joe Erectus then?
They're from the House of Erecti.
Yes. I think they might be. Yeah.
I think maybe, it could
or does a Morton Joe, does he lose his last name when he raises to the level of a Morton?
It's like
the king of, or a Caesar. Yes.
Yeah. I think maybe the Erectus clan all come from the same wife, and he's looking for the heir that he can give the Morton name to, perhaps.
Definitely.
There's still things to wonder about.
We need an Morton Joe film immediately.
We need a Scrotus Erectus film. That's our
Could
new
you do
guy.
that? Could you do like you go back even further in time and see the rise of Immortan Joe, and it's like I don't know. It's Timothy Chalamet. What?
Oh. Damn it! I hate you for that because it is just within the realm of plausible.
I mean, it's not too off from Dune, I guess.
Is there anything else? Should we talk more about Praetorian Jack? Should we talk?
He's cool. He's really good. I like him. I wish there's more of him. But I don't have too much else to say. He's good.
I think he's used really well.
Yeah.
Apparently, originally cast as Yahya Abdul Mahin. I might be mixing up some of that name.
Oh, I remember he was in this. He quit. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, bizarre to I guess I don't know that this character would work the same way with him. He's like such a physical presence. I mean, am I imagining things, or is he like 6'4"?
He's huge. Yeah, he's beastly. Yeah.
Before you get into anything of like, okay, are you still you're gonna, if it's a black guy, you're gonna just drag him behind a car to murder him? Like, well, what a
that seems like a wasteland thing more than a.
No, I know, but it's still gonna.
Yeah, well, I mean, that character's got to go, so
Exactly. Yeah, but you just wonder how that works. I mean, God, the way Praetorian Jack's death is pretty.
It's gruesome. Yeah,
pretty brutal. Mm-hmm. Well, it's brutal in how it's not gruesome, and that the camera does not follow him.
Yeah, once the dogs are off, you're kind of like, okay, I see what's happening, and that's done. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the sort of offhandedness of how quickly, like, he doesn't get a sort of even like her.
We don't even see a corpse getting dragged afterwards, which I expected. Yeah. You don't see it. Yeah.
Even they're whispering to each other, like as Dementus is going on, right before they're being chained up. We don't get to hear their goodbyes. We don't. It's not, the camera does not rack in on them to give us that intimate moment, or to really, there's no Passion of Joan of Arc stuff with his death and her.
Wouldn't have minded some of that, to be perfectly honest.
It would have played. I mean, it would have worked.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that it doesn't do it, it's just sort of something about how the wasteland works. And
yeah, not a lot of sentimentality in this film.
Yeah. Even he is not surprised that this is how he's going to go out.
Right.
It was going to be something like this, but man, brutal.
No one's ever surprised by their death in a Mad Max film.
Does the guy who goes over the bike in the Road Warrior and does like 4 flips? I think the 4th flip surprised the stuntman.
That's the shit I miss, man. The
reckless endangerment of human lives.
The terrifying stunts that you see in mostly just in Road Warrior and Fury Road. There's probably some of that in Thunderdome, right? I mean, a little bit.
Even that,
but less.
Not like Road Warrior.
Mm-hmm. Road Warrior is like, this shouldn't be happening.
Yes, it is. Like, I know it's 1981. But if it wasn't 1981 and you guys weren't Australian, so I know you have this attitude like, oh, all right, mate, let's go over the bike. I would feel like I should call some authorities to report this.
Yeah, it has that vibe. And I mean, he's got one foot in just pure exploitation at that point anyway. Fury Road, obviously there's no room for that, but it still has I don't know, that final action scene with the guys on the stilts swinging from car to car. It's like, I mean, that's the sort of once in a lifetime kind of shit, man, that any sequel or prequel would be hard pressed to live up to.
I mean, but the stowaway sequence is incredible. You get they're doing snow skis into paragliding.
It's all framed very well. It's all shot and conceived very well. I'm hyper conscious of that. I'm looking at a green screen situation in almost all of it, though, and that's a problem. It sucks.
To tie this back to Disney, this is something I've been thinking about lately, because I kind of hate CGI police.
No, it's not a particularly. It's not an interesting thing to say, but we're kind of in an age right now.
And it's sort of, I mean, not unlike, you can say that, CGI is bad and practical effects are good, but it's sort of like prequels are bad or legacy sequels are bad. There are plenty of exceptions that you're like, well, yeah, you can use it right. And it's okay. I mean, Fury Road used some green screens and some it's CGI and hit it from us perhaps better. But but one of the things I've been thinking about lately is that how bad a lot of the Star Wars stuff looks
Right.
On Disney Plus, and that's such a weird thing to demand realism in Star Wars, especially. But going back to the prequels, people complained about the looks of those because everything's on I think there were blue screens back then, but whatever. And when I look at one of the more recent shows, I mean, I guess The Acolyte just came out today.
I haven't seen any of it
recording this. Yeah. Well, maybe we'll look at that.
I intend to. But, yeah.
You look at Ahsoka or the Book of Boba Fett versus Andor, and it's not like Andor doesn't have CGI or anything, but it isn't using the volume, and I think the volume is sort of a killer. And maybe I'm like, you could do CGI for effects, like for creatures, for even creatures, you kind of prefer something with weight and heft, but for backgrounds, there's still something. No matter, like you can do CGI instead of matte paintings, but shooting, you can tell when Andor is shooting outside.
Yes.
It just looks and feels different. And you can tell Fury Road shooting outside. And there's a different feel that Furiosa is not shooting outside as much, even though the movie is set outside. Just
if you told me that they shot this thing entirely inside, I wouldn't be surprised. I doubt that's the case, but it wouldn't shock me.
No, it's not. But.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't know. If I went back and watched the first season of The Mandalorian, I don't know. Would that look okay? I remember it looking okay. I remember it looking kind of impressive. I've been like, wow, for a TV show, this looks quite good. But is it just the glut and the familiarity, or is it also bad back then? And I don't know.
I think it is. Yeah. Well,
because
like, a certain time.
The most recent Mandalorian I've seen, season 3, definitely looked like shit. So
right, yeah. And I think that's maybe our eyes have adjusted slightly.
Yeah.
And there is a ceiling on it. It's weird because you would think the backgrounds, which are not like the focus of our attention, the way that the explosions and the gross creatures are and everything, would be the thing that you could get away with fudging the most with CGI. And I think what I'm thinking this week anyway, maybe I'll change my mind as time goes on, is actually that is the part that you can't replicate. It is. Yeah. It's so striking when Andor just put them in a field again.
Right.
And all of a sudden the Mandalorian looks worse.
But you can have like an X-Wing fly by that field, and that'll look okay. You know?
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, you probably haven't seen The Fall Guy. No one did.
No.
That is that's a film that is explicitly about stunt work. Mm-hmm. And it's definitely a worse film than Furiosa. I didn't like it particularly, but I do have to give it credit, you know. There are stunts in it. Like if you go to see a movie with stunts, that one has some stunts, and they're not fantastic. And there's some that are definitely CGA'd, and it sucks a little, but there's a lot more that aren't. There's people falling off of things and getting thrown across the room by explosions and catching on fire and shit. And I was kind of hoping for a little more of that in Furiosa. And I'm surprised that I'm here saying The Fall Guy had more and better stunts. And I think that if there's one thing that I have an issue with the new film, it's that. That said, I really enjoyed it. You can't really get enough of George Miller. Chris Hemsworth is next level. It's a great performance, and it's just a good world. Even if we've already seen it, it's a good world, and it's fun.
Yeah, and the action is great. I think, even though if it's a pip below Furiosa in that way, you're talking about that there's a few more actual bodies being thrown around and maimed.
Well, Miller knows how to shoot an action scene, how to stage it, how to edit it. The things the camera captures are great, even if I don't quite know which is real or not. It's still just like the pictures created are terrific, and the flow of the sequence makes a lot of sense. It's great in that way.
Yeah,
I see this. It's really good. Yeah, of course.
It's great. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine there being a better action movie than this coming out this year. Maybe, without having seen The Fall Guy.
It's not better. It's not.
But I've seen some complaints about this movie not having as much action as Fury Road. And that's both true, and I can't imagine coming out of this movie and feeling like I was deprived of action.
Oh, definitely not. I think it's a little less impactful action is what I would argue.
Okay.
Which, is,
you'll be right.
It's up against some of the best that ever did it. So, no shame, but.
No shame. And yet it's impossible to avoid those comparisons. Yeah. Another big narrative sin, that people are banging on this for using actual clips of Fury Road in the end credits.
I don't give a shit.
And, I kind of liked that.
Yeah,
I didn't mind it. To me, because there's just two of them, it's like, oh, this is sort of reminds me of like when you could go see Matrix Reloaded and again get a full trailer for Revolutions immediately after it, and how that's a great sort of teaser, and when you can do it with a completed movie and really like, I like that. However, I understand the argument, and which I would generally subscribe to, is that about the worst thing you can do with them in your movie is explicitly remind the audience of the existence of a better movie.
Well, you can't. I don't think you can approach it with, well, obviously we're not as good as the last thing we made, so we're not going to remind them of the Fury Road. This whole movie exists to remind you of Fury Road in some way, but not at the end. We're going to hold back on that. No. That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah. I think that's that's what it is. I agree with that in principle, but also that the whole movie already does this. So why would we suddenly be coy for the end credits?
Exactly. Exactly.
So, all right. You're right about that.
So that's fine. Did you know that there's a Mad Max video game that's pretty good and falls between Furiosa and Fury Road and is about Max fighting Scrotus, which is why Scrotus does not appear in Fury Road?
Is that why he doesn't die in Furiosa too? That was the biggest question mark of it. Why on earth do you include this character? And it's like explicitly so Dementus can off somebody we know in Joe's camp. But no. It's because he's a video game character.
Which apparently a game George Miller had nothing to do with, but still included Scrotus. How nice is that? Yeah. He didn't even need to. Nice. It didn't need to be in canon at all. It's fucking Mad Max. There's no real canon. It's it's a real grab bag of scenarios.
Yes, because like you said, it's an oral tradition myth.
Now even that is a little bit confusing. Like the continuity of this whole thing is, well, I don't know. It's kind of delightfully broken and hard to pin down, right? That's kind of the fun of it.
I think you can actually iron it out pretty easily and still have like the cake and eat it too there by saying, well, Furiosa is a quote unquote real person in this world that is rising to sort of mythic status, and the storytellers are now, as a way of like her ascension to ruling the Citadel and sort of deifying her, is to start incorporating the mythic character of Mad Max into her origin story. Okay,
so she's like Davy Crockett, whereas Mad Max is more of a Paul Bunyan.
Davy Crockett was a real guy?
Yeah. He was a
real guy who met Paul Bunyan now one time. That is part of the myth. Yes.
Okay, good. Cool. That's good. All right. Hey, best movie of the year for you so far? What do you think?
Oh, for sure. But, I got little kids, man. I get to movies like once every 2 or 3 months. So
I got Dune over it. But okay. Yeah.
Dune. Yeah. I was trying to think what else have I seen. I was like, what have I seen recently? It's this and Dune and Drive Away Dolls. Have been the last couple trips to the theater.
Yeah, well, I don't know. It's been a banner year for grotesque, futuristic sci-fi in the desert.
That's true. Dune could have been a little more grotesque for my tastes, even.
It's pretty grotesque.
Maybe that's just because I've been watching so much Mad Max this week.
Well, I mean, the David Lynch film is right there.
There is that. I could always skip there. All right. It's a great movie. Ever see it? Fine. Maybe it's not better than Fury Road, actually.
No, it's fine. You can. That's not a bad opinion. You can take that. It's.
But no, the things that it gets dinged for, I don't think are like. Would not help it. I don't like to try and compress this story into a 2-day nonstop, like recreating the nonstop pace of Fury Road would feel horribly contrived.
Well, it wouldn't fit with the story they're telling at all. It'd be impossible, more or less. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's got what it lacks in a Nux, it makes up for in a Dementus to me.
Yeah, I'll go with that. All right. Thank you for listening to the program. And we'll be back shortly with wrapping up Michael Mann and our big Mass Effect 3 conversation before we start the Coen Brothers this summer. All right. That's it. I don't know. Is there a Mad Max kiss-off line that we could,
I think at this point the listeners all know that I hold them profoundly in contempt.